Welcome to the Intercut Podcast, the weekly show going over the TV, movies, and entertainment that people can't cut away from. I am your co-host, Zachary Shevich, and joining me, what we know is a drop, what we don't know is a notion, it's Arturo Zurita.
Amen, amen, amen. I wish my co-host right here understood what that meant, but soon they will be enlightened by one of the best shows of the year. But I'm excited to talk about movies for this one right here.
Yeah, we're going to get into some movies, but we're also joined by, on Twitch, they call her Dr. Respect.
Oh.
It's Amandathejedi.
What's up? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we are joined for the third year in a row with Amanda here at the midpoint of the year to talk about the best that TV movies have to offer so far. These are back-to-back episodes, and on this one, we're going to be talking about movies. So if you're looking for Tiger King, you've clicked on the wrong video. But before we get into our lists, let's talk a little bit about the year in 2020 in movies, because it's been a very strange one. We started it off really exciting. All three of us were at Sundance together. We saw some great movies.
Stop flexing. Poor people. Someone from a TIFF programmer is watching this going, damn you guys.
I mean, look, it's frustrating because we really want to talk about Minari and things like Promising Young Woman, even though I didn't catch that.
We got a whole video.
We will in the future, but the selection's a little more limited with theaters not open and a lot of things going to streaming and VOD. But it's been interesting because we talked about this before we started our video. Our lists are a little more indie, a little bit tamer than maybe they normally are at the halfway point.
I'd say so. But that's a good thing.
Yeah, for sure.
It's going to be interesting looking back at all the year's lists and different things. And just like the box office right now has Bad Boys killing it. Nothing has topped that, clearly. You have indies that are topping the charts for like the 3 theaters that are open in Texas and Florida. So I still think it's really interesting that we'll never really have a year like this again. And a lot of it is thanks to a bunch of movies that are available because they're streaming or VOD and stuff. So I think it's cool. I don't want to even call it a fluke. I want to call it a once-in-a-lifetime type thing, even though there's a lot of bad stuff happening. Yeah, we hope. Once in 100 years.
Bring us back down to earth a little bit, Amanda.
Sorry.
The movies that I don't know if there's any movies that you guys were hoping to have caught that you haven't quite caught yet. I know for me, Shirley, I missed out on that just in the last month. It's been busy, but that one's on Hulu, and I have a feeling it would be on my top 10 list had I had a chance to see it. Also, Spaceship Earth and Babyteeth and Emma. But I don't know about you guys. What have you been what did you hope to catch?
There's a few. There's nothing that I was like, I'm dying to see this. I think I caught all those, but I did before we do this, and I didn't get to it. I wanted to catch High Note, but again, I don't think that necessarily would have made my list.
I don't think so.
I wanted to see The Way Back, but I didn't see that either. So nothing major. I think I caught most of what I wanted to. So
cool.
Yeah.
My 3 are foreign films that I think they're all probably TIFF films. 37 Seconds, which I think is on Netflix. The Whistlers and Invisible Life, which I know is on Amazon. That one had a couple of name changes, but those are like the 3 that I wanted to catch before this podcast. 3 that I missed because I was binge watching a bunch of other ones. But yeah.
Whistlers is a good one. That's one I wish I had caught as well.
Nice.
Some honorable mentions before we get into the list themselves. I had The Assistant on mine, the Kitty Green movie. The Willoughbys, Onward, a couple
very good
animated ones. Buffaloed with Zoe Dutch. Miss Juneteenth, which we talked about recently on Intercut.
Yeah, that's on
mine. I don't know if you have any honorable mentions you want to mention before we get into our top 10s.
I think those were most of mine, honestly. Some of it's one of those things we're gonna start talking, and if you guys mention too many of the same movies that I plan, I'll swap in something. But
gotta leave yourself some options.
You gotta leave options, you know.
I had the same ones that Zach had. I would throw in St. Francis, which was a South by pick from last year that is now fully out. That one was pretty good. Let's see what else I have. I have one that I don't want to mention because I want to say that it is on Amanda's list. So I will defer.
You will defer.
But I will
think
add.
It's on my list.
I think it might be on your list. I think.
Because maybe I think it's on your list. And then I won't say it. That's fine.
It might be. So I'm not going to say anything.
Okay.
But I do have a lot of foreign ones that came out last year that I know many of us may not have on it. I know La Belle Époque was one that I caught at TIFF. It's finally out for people to watch this year, so I know some may consider it this year. We all call Les Miserables, I think, which was another TIFF one.
Yeah.
That one's out on Amazon. Beanpole, I know, is out. Bacurau is
That's another one I
out.
wanted to catch.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of those that we had mentioned last year, I definitely, now that they're available and everyone's at
Here's a
home.
question.
What's up?
I don't want to say it out loud. If we all saw it last year and it released some places last year, but it went wide this year on Valentine's Day, is it a movie from this year?
I'm going to be honest with you. I've been telling Zach I have a theory it could win an Oscar depending on how it works. Maybe if they had agents in there and they slipped in and were able to do something with it, I would count it. I would bring it up as an honorable mention because I know you did mention it last year, though. So for like ourselves,
Portrait
it's
of a
not.
Lady on Fire.
But it does count.
Watch
it came out
it.
this year. Why not?
Yeah, so a lot of people didn't get the chance to see it till this year. So I think, and it just dropped. The Criterion version is available now if you want to get it. I'm waiting for mine in the mail. Watch Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
I got mine.
This is the tippity top.
It's
Yeah,
dope.
I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like it might even be fair to leave Portrait of a Lady on Fire off of our lists because
We've talked
it might
about
be
it.
our number one on all of our lists.
Definitely.
Had it been qualified.
Yes.
And I've gotten some pushback from people when I suggest that it is a 2020 movie, but it is kind of a 2020 movie.
A little bit.
So
Hey,
Yeah.
look, it found its way in.
Yeah, it found its way
It found its way in.
we got to have the discussion. All right, so before we get into the top 10s, just want to remind everybody to subscribe to the Intercut podcast. Get used to that. Either the video podcast on youtube.com/intercutpod or the audio podcast available on most podcatchers. Also, follow Intercut on social media, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. We are at IntercutPod. That's at IntercutPod. That's short for podcast. Art, do you want to kick us off here with your number 10?
For sure. All right, so I have one that came out at Sundance. I want to say 2 years ago. It is called Judy and Punch.
Oh,
yeah. I don't know if you guys were able to catch
that
this
was
one.
last
I can't really.
year's, yeah.
I can't really call it comedic. I can't really call it. I don't even know what to call it. But it stars, as I pull it up over here. It's not really a true story, but it's kind of based off of like these marionette puppets, or more so the people who created these marionette puppets and a show that they had. And it was very misogynistic and all. Like there was a bunch of backstory to these two. It's got a little bit of a Big Eyes element in there, and where the guy is taking, everything that she brings into the table. It stars Mia Wasikowska and the main guy. I don't see who plays the main guy over here, but her husband does a lot of questionable things. And there's a certain sequence in the movie that some people claim is not a spoiler. I will respect it and say that it is a spoiler. But something gets thrown out a window.
Yeah,
and that's either the point where you're in with the movie or you're like, yeah, this movie is not for me. But Judy and Punch was a movie that I was able to catch. I think it's out on VOD now. I'm not sure if it's on a streaming service. But out of this year, this is one of the movies that I've definitely been thinking about a lot. And it's my number 10. Nice. I don't think this one will make it towards the end of the year, though. But, hey, Judy and Punch found its way.
I caught that at last year's Sundance, yeah.
So that's mine.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, Judy and Punch getting us started. Amanda, how about you? What's your number 10?
I'll do kind of what I did last year, where I kind of talked about like a nice teen, fun coming of age type thing. The Half of It, Netflix. I thought it was really cute. I thought it was like my reaction was, I want the other half of it now.
Yes.
I thought it was like, I thought it was a really interesting look at it's kind of got the whole, like, it's got a little bit of the Sierra Burgess / Cyrano story kind of going on, where it's like somebody's like, I want you to write as if you're me so that I can impress somebody and that kind of thing. But it handles it in a good way, and it handles that friendship between those two, the male and female, really well. So I really liked it. If you kind of thought the concept of something like Sierra Burgess as a loser was good, but you hated it because it was not good, I would give this one a go. I really enjoyed it, and it was cute, and it's an easy watch, which sometimes you just need.
Yeah, there's a lot of movies, particularly the romantic comedies, that try this Cyrano de Bergerac thing where you have somebody writing a letter for somebody else, and then there's another love story going on. And a lot of times, romantic comedies in particular really rely on the charisma of its cast. And Leia Lewis, Alexis Lemire, Daniel Dimer, the three main people in the half of it are all just really, really good.
Yes.
Leia Lewis in particular just does such a great job of characterizing Ellie as this kind of like introverted, very smart, but not very not very experienced girl.
She's not street
who's
savvy.
Opening up through these letters. The half of it's my number 9. I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but yeah, I think it's a very delightful movie. So I'm glad that made your list too.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Backing up just a little to my number 10 is another movie we've discussed here on Intercut. It's Quentin Dupieux's Deerskin, starring Jean Dujardin and Adele Haenel. It's just a very goofy movie. I don't know how deep into it you want to get with its story of a man's obsession with a leather jacket, but just the way in which Quentin Dupieux is able to sort of escalate things in a slow but kind of increasingly crazy way. How his obsession goes from trying to paint himself as a celebrity to a more aggressive version of trying to make sure he's the only person in the world who gets to wear a jacket. It's the kind of plot that only a filmmaker like him would come up with and would take to that level, to that extent. It's got this really interesting muted color palette that kind of matches the muted expressions of the world. I thought it was very delightful. So that's my number 10.
Wait, so Adele is in this?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know. I almost watched that today, and I watched some other thing that didn't end up making my list, and this might have. So
it might have. She's great in it. She's funny.
I'm sure she is, because she's fantastic.
Looking forward to Deerskin showing up on your best of 2020 at the end of the year
absolutely,
list.
Obviously.
Specifically for Adele.
Always.
Art, what's your number 9?
My number 9 is Alice Wu's The Half of It. I was going to wait just to top it, so I guess it's both of our number 9s. I agree with everything both of you guys said. Amanda hit it right on the nail, especially. The one thing I would add is I know a lot of people have seen it like, I don't see what's different about this than all the other ones, than every other rom-com or anything. And I'd be like, I made a whole video that you just watched on this. I think that it gets really into the intricacies, specifically within the, like her Asian background, especially in a very religious town, that it doesn't even chastise them. Like, I feel a lot of people think that it's like it's chastising the religious people within the town. It's like, no. It's showing faults that are there and ignorances that may have happened, but it still sees them just as people, because she was making a movie that wasn't just for the people who already agree with the movie, but for the people who, because that's the whole point of a movie, is to put you in another person's shoes so that you can understand what they're going through. And I thought the half of it did that very well.
Yeah, absolutely. Loved it.
That's my number 9.
Awesome. Yeah, so all three of us putting the half of it on our lists. Definitely one that you should catch up with on Netflix if you haven't yet. Amanda, what do you have at number 9?
It was actually originally the half of it, but I just realized that I only had 9 listed here. But so I guess next up, I was kind of going back and forth between Emma and King of Staten Island. I'm going to go King of Staten Island just because I saw it more recently. It's not perfect by any means. I think in my review, I said it would have probably done really well as like a limited series. Like if it had been something that it had more time to flesh out the ideas, because there's so many layers of like, if for those who don't know, it's basically kind of like loosely based on Pete Davidson's actual life. With like minor changes, or you know, it's rather than trying to be a comedian, he wants to be a tattoo artist. It's just different things like that. But there's like a lot of different things, like with the dynamic with his friends, the dynamic with his family, the dynamic with himself trying to grow up and get over the fact, you know, that he kind of was dealt a pretty serious tragedy when he was younger and is kind of struggling to like move on from a lot of that. So I like a lot of the ideas that are there. I did like a lot of the comedy. And if there's something about Pete Davidson, I didn't think I liked him as much as I do, but it's just something about the way that he delivers things in such like a self-deprecating, like I think I'm a piece of shit just as much as you do kind of way. That's just very charming to me. It's not perfect, but like once it gets to like streaming services and stuff, I would definitely recommend. Like obviously you can rent it right now, but it's like $20 to rent. So if that's a little bit out of your wheelhouse, you know, wait for a bit. But it's definitely worth a watch. But I do think it probably would have done better as like a limited series.
That's a good point about that limited series thing. It's got that very slack nature that a lot of the Apatow movies do have, but it also feels a little bit segmented in that you've got like the bit with his sister and the bit with the firehouse, and then the whole stuff at the restaurant with the Fight Club, which I thought was a little bit weird.
That's weird.
but it almost feels like it might fit better in a format like a Master of None or a Better Things, rather than necessarily this movie format.
Yeah, I would agree.
Where you can breathe a little bit more. So,
we might be seeing miniseries, perhaps.
That was my thought. Yeah, I would have done better that way.
We might be seeing a little bit more of Pete Davidson later on in this list. Art, what is your number 8?
My number 8 is a movie called A Good Woman is Hard to Find. It reminds me a lot of a South by pick from last year called Alice, where a mother, her husband practically wasted all this money on prostitutes, and now she has to go and regain all that money. This is in that very kind of similar vein, except her husband has been murdered, and she's trying to figure out who did that while she has her 2 kids that she's trying to take care of. I think the character arc that she goes through of just being like this very just tired. Like the moment you see her, this woman is just tired as can be. But she goes to the grocery store, and at the grocery store, there's a guy who's always hitting on her. And that story arc of everything that she goes through to figure out her husband's murder, just to be able to make ends meet, to be able to be there for her kids, and what she ends up becoming. The way that I titled it was, "This is if the Karens of the world use their power for good." I don't know how else to put it. By the ending of the movie, that's exactly how I felt. I thought it was a really good performance by, let me make sure I get her name correct, Sarah Bolger, who played Sarah. She did a fantastic job, and I would highly recommend this one. I think it's out on VOD for everyone to stream right now. Movie from the UK, by the way.
Awesome. A little like gritty crime thriller to spice up the list.
Yeah.
Pretty dope.
I'll have to check it out.
Nice. Amanda, what's your number 8?
This is a bigger one, Invisible Man.
Very cool.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought that opening scene, like it's not like a perfect movie by any means, but I just kind of like that opening scene when this isn't really a spoiler because it's in the trailer, when she's trying to just get out of the house, is like some of the most. It's so tense, and it just made me think of like all the people who have actually had to go through situations like that where they do have to escape abusive relationships and how horrifying that can be. And then other than that, like Elizabeth Moss plays crazy like no other person I've ever experienced. She's gonna pop up on the list again.
I was about to say,
yeah, she's gonna pop up. Not a fan of the Scientology stuff, but she is incredible at what she does. For a horror movie, I definitely think it's one of the more standout ones that came out this year, because there were like an inordinate number of horror movies that came out at the beginning of the year. I did like a whole video about how many of them were. There's like 12 or 13 of them that came out within 2 months. So it was a lot. But I think this one does still manage to stand out. I think there's a lot of fun things in it. There's a lot of nice little callbacks to like the original Invisible Man story. I don't want to give too much away if you haven't seen it yet, because it does kind of leave you in one of these like, is it all in her head? Is something really happening? And like where it goes from there.
Yeah, no actress better at playing a woman losing her grip with reality right now than Elizabeth Moss.
Absolutely.
I had The Invisible Man at number 5 on my list.
Oh, wow.
I had honorable mention.
I think
mine's been
think it's a...
Yeah.
Go ahead, Amanda.
No, I was just going to say mine kind of, like, my list has kind of been moving around, but, like, like, it's definitely cemented in a good spot on mine for,
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think Leigh Whannell is such an effective filmmaker when it comes to doling out these scares, and he's so smart in the way that he uses negative space and the audience expectation.
Yes.
Because we've all purchased a ticket, or in many of our cases, rented on PVOD, a movie called The Invisible Man. We are expecting an Invisible Man, and the way in which he uses that to his benefit to increase the tension, to make you think you see things when they're not things there, I think is just some really expert level filmmaking, and to revisit the story and give it such a relevant undertone in terms of the domestic abuse that it touches on. I think is just it's the kind of remake filmmaking that we want to see, where you actually add to the material, or you bring something new to it. So for all those reasons, I think it's one of the standouts from this year so far.
It's the Blumhouse movie you want to see. Leave it to Leigh Whannell, who did Saw, to know how to use that, what is it, $5 and a pack of gum that they give you at Blumhouse. He knew exactly what he was doing. Dope.
Yeah, very good.
My number 8 is Swallow.
Hey!
From Carlo Mirabella Davis. I got the mini poster behind me. It's a really interesting film, sort of like this idyllic housewife who is sort of cracking at the edges and starts to swallow various objects as a way of breaking out of her shell, sort of. It's got this very creepy undertone, and it definitely made me squirm a lot more than many of the horror movies I've seen. It's a great performance from Haley Bennett. And yeah, it's one of the standouts for the year for me so far. I know Art liked it a lot as well.
I haven't watched it yet because I started watching the trailer and I was like, nope.
Nope.
Yeah.
It's dope. No. I'm very curious. If you do end up catching it, I'm curious your thoughts on it.
I'll watch it. If it's good, I'll watch it. But it just like, oh God, I saw like one thing and I was like, no.
Watch it with some thumbtacks, pile of dirt, all your movie snacks that you need.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it just feels so real that even though it's not necessarily a horror movie in the traditional sense, it's so horrific and hard to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we'll see. I guess there isn't an Ari Aster movie this year, so I need something like that. I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's go to number 7, Art.
My number 7 is a movie called, just make sure that I have it as my number 7, Babyteeth. This is, I want to go through the cast first of all, because it's pretty much a family. So it's like you got your mom, your dad, and they have a young, their daughter is terminally ill, and she decides, you know what, I'm going to go hang out with this like druggie, really, which I guess is the worst way to put it, but another guy who is as open as possible. That's it. He's got a drug addiction. But then you start to learn different things about the parents as well, as they try to like make their daughter happy, so that they allow her to hang out with the guy even though they don't really want to. The daughter is played by Eliza Scanlon, who was actually the youngest in Little Women. Toby Wallace was in a Netflix show called The Society. I did not expect him to put in this performance, and my man came in. Ben Mendelsohn, I don't need to say more. And then Essie Davis, who done Game of Thrones, Babadook, kills it in this movie. I thought it was a fantastic movie. It may come off very first world problems to a lot of people, because I had seen this and Miss Juneteenth back to back. Both of these movies are up there on what I want to call the independent box office of 2020 that has been reigning over the years. I think they were both at number 4 and number 5. But this movie, like, it really gets into the just addiction, and then all the perils that they're going through as a family, considering that the dad's even a psychologist or a therapist. But I really like this movie. A lot of people had recommended this one to me. It's sad, but it's pretty dope. I highly recommend it. Babyteeth.
Yeah, that was on my list to watch too, actually.
Yeah, that poster is very striking. It's kind of been burned in my mind a lot.
Right?
Like you see blue hair.
Yeah, it's a dope poster, and I think a lot of the shots in the movie are very similar to that. It's very free-spirited.
That's cool.
Very cool. Very cool. Amanda, what's your number 7?
I'm going to go with Shirley. So I got back-to-back Elizabeth. Again, a lot of these, honestly, could interchange around the list quite a bit with where I'm feeling about them. But this is one I caught with Art at Sundance this year. And it's about the actual author, Shirley Jackson, who is a very famed horror author that if you don't think you know who she is, you probably at least experienced something that's based on one of her stories. Most notably, she was behind The Lottery. She's behind The Haunting of Hill House. Really big things like that. But this is basically, it's set in their, like, her actual reality, and they bring in this young couple to kind of stay with them because there's like, I'm totally explaining this wrong. Either way, so there's I don't want to ruin it for Zach either, but either way, there's a young couple. The male is kind of like a TA almost for Shirley Jackson's husband, and he's like, okay, yeah, you guys can stay with us, and your girlfriend can help around the house and stuff. But there gets this like very interesting relationship dynamic that starts going between Shirley, who Elizabeth Moss plays, and Odessa Young's character, who is the female. And it's just, again, a lot of very odd behavior, a lot of like kind of like gaslighting behavior, a lot of just like mental games and stuff, because like it's just a very fun situation for Shirley, who has a lot of emotional flip ups constantly. It's a very, very interesting movie. Very worth the watch.
It's by Josephine Decker, who we've covered
Josephine
multiple times.
Decker.
She won the award for Best Auteur Director at Sundance for this movie. And even
they made the award for her.
They made the award for her, and well deserved. Like Amanda was saying when we caught it, I think we both stayed for the Q&A, because I remember her saying that this was like, it's a story of Shirley Jackson, based off the book of Shirley Jackson, based off the script of Shirley Jackson, because she didn't work on the script, Josephine Decker. She directed it. So then she took the script that was based off of the book, based off her life, and did another thing with it. It's on Hulu. It's a crazy story. Everything Amanda said doesn't even like scratch the surface of the mental games they play in this
exactly.
movie.
I'm just trying to like lightly dance around it without, because there's really nothing to spoil, but I just want people to go into it with like open expectations, but it's just like it's a wild ride.
That's the thing with Elizabeth Moss. Both of her movies this year, they end and you're like, did it happen or not?
Yeah,
you're
like what is going on?
You know what happened, but you also have no idea what just happened. So
yeah.
I think it's one of the best performances of the year comes from Elizabeth Moss in this movie.
And Odessa Young was really good as well, actually.
Yeah. So. And Michael Stolberg.
And Michael Stolberg, yeah.
Hey, you know what? Logan Lerman, throw him in there,
you know what? Take it, Logan. You could go, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm definitely really excited to catch up with this one. Josephine Decker's last film, Madeline, is one of those movies that just you feel very viscerally, like you go through the same emotions as the character through the way that she's able to disorient you through her filmmaking, and it seems like she's pulling some similar tricks in kind of getting that emotionally manipulative stuff going on in this movie.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. All right, my number 7 is The Platform, El Hoyo, the Netflix horror sci-fi thriller about a vertical prison with a mysterious elevator thing that dispenses food to the different floors. I don't know. It's just a very interestingly created world. The way in which the prison serves as kind of a symbol for society at large is really interesting and gives you some food for thought that I think you don't normally get in something that is as gritty and horrific as this movie is at times, because it also has these intense action sequences like you get in some, almost like in a Korean horror movie or something. I just think it's a really interesting ride, the way in which it constantly switches you up by moving Gregor up and down to going to different floors and changing his roommates, and I was gripped for the duration of it, and I have been thinking about it a lot. So it's definitely one of my standouts from this year.
This is one that I think a lot of, like, in the future, people would be like, yeah, this reminds me of The Platform. I think a lot, just the aesthetics of it is something that is going to probably be ingrained in a lot of people's minds. But then just the way that it was made, everything is supposed to be symbolic of something. So you could be like, oh, that person represents religion. That person is like a messiah coming down. That this person is this political party. No, it's this political party. No, it's this type of ideology. So there's a lot to play with in the movie. I think that's definitely going to be one that's going to be remembered for a long time. And Netflix has it, so everyone was watching it when that dropped. So
because it premiered at TIFF.
Sorry.
Yeah, it premiered at TIFF.
Yeah, it was a TIFF movie, yeah.
Yeah, it was a TIFF movie.
I got to see it with the guy there, and we asked him so many questions, and he was like, look, I'm not going to answer anything.
Art did a very good video breaking it down, though.
Oh, thanks, Zach. Appreciate it.
Art, I believe we're at your number 6.
Yep. Another TIFF movie. I was with Carson Runquist, and he was like, bro, you got to watch this movie. You're going to like it. And I did. Almost a year later. It's called Sorry We Missed You, Ken Loach's new movie. Pretty much the best way I can describe it is, so the financial crash happens. I can't remember exactly where they are, wherever this takes place, but it's overseas, and pretty much this dude decides to work for a company that's Amazon Flex, practically. It's a driving company, but he's not an employee, all right? He doesn't have wages. He has fees. It's everything to keep this person from not being liable to the company at all. But he has to be, or the company's not liable for him, but he's liable to the company. And it's what we've been seeing with Uber and the drivers. It's what we've been seeing I did Amazon Flex for a long time, so I know exactly what's going on in this movie. He doesn't have a schedule, but he's got to drop everything off before 5. He doesn't have to, he's on his own free terms, but here's a bottle given to you day one because you're not going to have time to pee. And it's all the ups and downs that they go through. Another movie that I caught as well was 14, which is a movie about these two girls who grow up. And I thought the script, the dialogue, just sequences where you don't really cut. That movie does it very well. The acting wasn't that strong. I was like, man, if the acting was stronger in 14, you would have like this really good movie. And that was like, Sorry We Missed You. Obviously, Ken Loach has way more experience, has a much bigger budget, but it's not a happy movie. It's just the turmoils of what you go through, not only with you trying to get a job and how they just screw you over, but then how you then take away something from your wife and your kids. You're not really there for your kids when you're working 14-hour days, working for yourself to a degree. It's a pretty crazy movie. Really great performances. It's very just subtle, very slow, but I really stuck with me because it's true. It's true. And there's no, I mean, I don't want to spoil the ending, but it just sucks. It sucks.
Yeah. I didn't catch Sorry We Missed You, but I caught Ken Loach's last film, I, Daniel Blake.
Yeah.
Which, similarly is like a very empathetic movie to the plight of working people. It's a movie about a guy who, after he suffers a heart attack, he's just struggling to receive support from the employment and support allowance that they have in the UK. And this seems like it's definitely working on the same frequency. So I'm
It is. I did see Daniel Blake. Yeah, because he gets all mad at them. It's the same, dude. It is the same spirit. I was about to say, it's like you could definitely tell it's the same director. Yeah, 100%. Man, he really hates the people abusing workers.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you find directors get into these like trends, and they're hitting the same beats but just in different ways, because it's like it's just something that they can express.
Vivarium was another movie where Vivarium was another movie where the director did the same thing. All of his movies has pretty much been against gentrification and pretty much getting people to all live in the same houses while they all go to work for the same capitalist people who set them up to live in these same houses and just circle jerk them around. So I think that we're definitely even more so at a time where a lot of filmmakers are focusing on like that one through line and putting it into all of their movies. So
it's cool.
This one's really good.
Totally. All right, that was your number 6, Amanda. What's yours?
I think this might actually be on your list, but higher up, Bad Education.
Ooh, yeah, that one.
It's a little higher.
That was my number 2.
Yeah, I kind of figured. Yeah, I caught that at TIFF, and I did really enjoy it. But it's such an interesting movie. So it's essentially about a real story of a kind of like a school and a principal. And you kind of get this one level where you think there's like a little bit of corruption happening in the school. And then it just kind of like opens up and you realize it's this whole thing, and that Hugh Jackman character is basically like American Psycho, where that like he's not, like it's just a total facade of a personality that he's been putting on for the duration of this movie. Yeah, it's, I'm sure you can probably describe it better because I knew it was going to be on your list, so I kind of wanted to make sure you had enough to talk about. But the performances in that are absolutely incredible. And it's just once that facade starts pulling away and you're just really pulled in and enraptured into that story from something where you're like, oh, this is like a really cool guy and he cares about students and it's awesome. And then it's just, oh, no. So, yeah.
I was also able to catch it at TIFF, and part of the reason that I think it's so high up on my list is because I've had the ability to rewatch it, and you see, what's going to come, and you know the inevitable downfall. It's that much more interesting to watch Hugh Jackman's journey through this movie as he just desperately tries to keep his life together and keep, as you said, like keep up appearances and maintain that facade. But ultimately, like the way in which he's able to try and balance these different catastrophes is because he has created such a comfy situation for so many people around him that he kind of inoculates himself, and he is separated from any kind of criticism or any kind of real accountability. And I think the way in which that movie sort of shows this one system as like a microcosm of the larger system, and the way that you can expand that idea to our society at large is fascinating and very just well articulated, well written, well directed by Corey Finley, well written by Mike Bukowski, who also went to Roslyn High School, so obviously has that insider knowledge of what the community was like. So yeah, like I said, it's my number 2 of the year. It's a really interesting movie. It is. I like it more the more that I think about it.
I think it would probably have ended up higher on my list if I'd had a chance to watch it again. So I haven't seen it since I saw it back in September. Right. But I do think it would end up higher if I had the chance to revisit it, because it really is just a spectacle of a movie as you're going through it. Yeah. And great performances again, like so many good performances.
none of us have said the words Allison Janney.
I was going to say
yet,
Allison
but Allison
Janney.
Janney does a Long Island accent, and it's great.
She's so
Fantastic.
good. Yeah. I loved it.
Art. We did your
Yeah,
number
so
6.
now
So
it's yours now, Zach.
bringing it back to Pete Davidson, it's Big Time Adolescence.
Hey,
That's way further down
yeah.
on my list, but that's okay. Yeah.
The coming of age suburban comedy with Pete Davidson as kind of like the cooler older brother that I feel like a lot of us maybe wish we had for some aspects, but ultimately realize like
They're not good
maybe
for
it's
you.
not the best influence.
Nope.
I think it's a very relatable idea with the Griffin Gluck's character sort of feeling like he wants access to a world that seems cool, but isn't necessarily what he thought it would be, and he's kind of creating a type of image for himself that he has to then realize that's not who he wants to be either, which is so integral to that experience of growing up. I think sometimes you don't get that from these like teenage coming of age movies. That experience of this character that you've created for yourself is not actually you.
Yeah.
And the way in which this movie kind of pulls the rug out from under him is very great, but also very funny. And I think for me, it's the better Pete Davidson comedy performance. He's just so charming and funny throughout this movie. So yeah, I really like this one. It's available to catch on Hulu also.
And we caught this one 2 years ago. We were all at Sundance. We kept Amanda up because we just kept quoting the police officer.
Word.
I agree. I love
Bamba hasn't left the rotation for me. Yeah.
But no, it's fantastic. When we talked about both this and Staten Island, we said that this had the comedy down pat, while Staten Island had the heart of it.
Yeah.
But when you judge them both, this had a 10 out of 10 out of the comedy in my perspective, while the other one had like an 8 out of 10 in the heart level. But they were both. It's almost Pete Davidson is playing himself in every role that he's practically in. And this one, like you said, he plays like the older brother that you kind of want to be until you realize it's not really what you want to be. I also enjoyed it a little bit more than Staten Island, but yeah, this is one of our favorites. One of our favorites from Sundance that year.
Yeah, I relate to a lot of these stories of the like looking up to like an older crowd, because like when I first got into high school, I started getting into like the punk culture, and I looked up to all these like older kids. Some of them were like our friends' older brothers. They were in like grade 12, but then it was like, yeah, they should have graduated like a year or two ago, and for some reason they're still in school. And it's like, oh man, it's so cool that like such and such's mom lives down the street and they can go there and drink on lunch breaks. That's so cool. So you're trying so hard to impress these people that are just trying to gatekeep something that by concept shouldn't be gatekept. It's like, it's punk music.
Right.
Like that's the least punk thing I could think of. So I ended up in like a bad situation where I like was drinking when I was like 14 years old, and it almost very easily could have ruined my life. And then I smartened up, realized I didn't want anything to do with these people. And now looking back, and I'm like, yeah, they were losers. Like some of them were super nice, and some of them I'd still be friends with now. But like a couple of them were like genuine losers who liked the fact that kids looked up to them, and it made them feel big, and it made them feel important. And like I can't imagine being like 19 years old wanting to hang out with a 14-year-old.
Yeah, that's a thing that I think we're seeing also just in our real world too, where, when you are 14, 15, 16, it's like, oh, cool. I want to hang out with this 21, 22, 24-year-old. And then when you get to that age, 20, 21, 22, it's like, why would I want to hang out? Like,
yeah, there's something wrong.
What would have to happen to me to want to hang out with a teenager right now,
I think the idea is like they're looking for something, like Amanda said, for guidance.
You're trying to find yourself.
All the people who can guide you, who should be guiding you, aren't there for you. They're doing other stuff. These are the people who stayed there, so you feel, oh, these are the one people who are at least giving me attention. Well, it's because they have nothing else to do on their hands.
Yeah.
So you end up becoming the guy who tattoos kids, 10-year-old kids.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I really liked it. I had that kind of floating around in my top 3 for me. So yeah,
cool,
big fan.
Cool.
Big fan. I'm a huge coming of age fan. Like people should know this about me. So yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a theme throughout the lists over the years.
It is, yeah.
All right, so I think we're at Art's number 5.
Yes. And Then We Danced, a Sundance movie that I know played at a bunch of other festivals as well. I got to catch this right after Sundance. And pretty much it's this guy who has been this dancer. He's been wanting to like kill it and make it to the like Gregorian traditional dance. But that's the thing, it's very traditional. And his way of dancing is a little bit more modern. And he's showcasing how he wants to dance, and that's going against what has been established. Then comes another dancer who not only throws everything for a loop, but throws his own love life for a loop, and he starts getting attached to him, and wherever that relationship goes, I don't want to spoil, but I think it's dope. I think it's great, and it leads to a fantastic conclusion that really showcases something that I've seen in a bunch of other movies recently as well. It's like people wanting to be a part of something, but that something is so established and doesn't want new people to come in or doesn't want any changes, whatever it is. Be it, for us, the Academy has a specific look on movies, I can't even speak of so many other things that have that tradition. And when someone wants to come who's been raised in it, but do something a little bit more different, do something a little bit more modern, they're chastised because they want to keep the integrity or the purity of whatever that is because they're too afraid for change. And I really love that aspect of it. On top of that, there's the love story that's in there. And this is fantastic.
Yeah, I would have put that on my list. I didn't realize that it actually released officially.
Yeah, I believe it hit VOD on June 2nd.
Oh, damn. So. Okay. Yeah, that would definitely make it on my list then. I thought that was really beautiful. I was lucky enough. I ended up getting a screener for that on my, while we were at Sundance. So I was watching it on my, I was on waiting for a connecting flight. And it's not the optimal time to watch a movie, but it still managed to, pull me in so deeply as I was watching it in this airport. That it was very beautiful.
Everyone always talks about now you got to watch the cinema in the cinema. Dude, if you can watch something on your iPad, or as Scorsese would say, big iPad, if that can still draw you in, that is a story. That is a movie. It doesn't matter where you are. It will bring you in. But then We Dance, I think, is fantastic.
Absolutely.
All right, so Art giving us a couple films from the UK, giving us a film from Georgia.
All over the place,
the country, not the state.
Yeah.
Little international flavor. Very cool. Amanda, what is your number 5?
My number 5 is probably something that could have been lower on my list, but I really liked it and still liked it on repeat viewing. The Lodge.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we saw that again at last year's Sundance, and the reason why I always really, for me, I know it's weird because I was watching, I made a full video on this on my channel, and then I noticed a lot of it, so every once in a while when I go to upload, I just see what other people are titling and stuff like that, just to get a general idea of what's happening. Yeah. And then I was like, man, people didn't like this. And people were like, this is slow. And I'm like, I didn't really get that impression. We watched that at midnight. And that kept me captivated for 2 hours. I don't understand. I don't know what people necessarily expect from things. But I felt very captivated by all the performances and everything going on in this. So essentially, The Lodge is a kind of it's a horror movie in which these two kids have a dad who starts seeing a new woman and they really do not like this person, and then because of an incident that happens they start to really not like this woman, but it's not really because she's done anything to them. It's just, kids are like that. They put blame in weird places. So her name, so it's Riley Keough plays the new woman, and she's fantastic in this, but they kind of get this idea that they're going to go to the family lodge for the holidays, but the dad's got more work to finish up. So he basically takes them up there, gets everything set up, and then leaves the next morning. And he's like, I'll be back on the weekend. What could possibly go wrong? And then a lot of stuff starts going wrong. It
starts with a snowstorm, gets a lot worse from there.
Yeah, it starts with a snowstorm, it gets worse from there. They show The Thing on television. They're having they're calling out the classics and stuff. But essentially, it just kind of ends up in the situation where they wake up and all the power is out and they can't really get anywhere because the storm's picked up so heavily. We know that she as a character has some other issues. Because of things that have happened, and it just kind of ends up in a situation where everybody gets a little bit in over their head. It has some genuinely terrifying moments in this. I really enjoyed it, and I would recommend it. And for me, it's one of the it's on the good side of the horror movies that have been released this year for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely among that A24 brand of slow burn horror. The co-directors Severin Fiala and Veronica Franz make a lot of those kind of kind of frustrating at times, but deeply creepy movies. Yeah. I really liked Goodnight Mommy from them. Art, I know you've done a lot of research into. I've done
so much on these.
There's so much about them. It's so weird. It's like, oh yeah, he used to babysit my kid. Okay.
Boy got paid in VHS tapes. Like, who does that?
Well, yeah, exactly. Paid in VHS is wild.
And they're related. She's his aunt, and I believe he's her nephew. So, like, they've been together all their lives. And the beauty about them is when they were doing this movie, they're practically like, no, we do things our own way. We don't like, if we're gonna make this movie, we're gonna take the script that you gave us, rip it up, and try to do something completely different. And I think that may be the thing that a lot of American audiences were frustrated with, is that they wanted to go in there and they wanted answers. They wanted a specific thing.
Answers,
American
jump
audiences,
scares.
thank you. They're not looking for tone. They're not looking for an aesthetic. They are looking for a horror movie that gives you the shocks and everything that's in there. They're not going to go back to rewatch it. And I got a lot of that in the video that I made that got really in depth, and people went, "No, I want you to watch it for me." And I was like,
no,
"Okay, I see what the explanations are becoming now." But
there's like a whole other layer of things going on there,
yeah.
and with kids and how kids process grief and how kids process trauma and how people process situations and how they're not mentally developed enough to know when they're not necessarily doing something that's like messed up, and we glorify it in comedies, but somehow it's like not okay to show it in this. It's just such an interesting, because again, I don't want to spoil anything, but it's just like, it's just one of those things. It's like behaviors that you see in like every kind of like kid comedy that's so funny. But in this, it's like that they're little monsters, you know, like, no, it's, I personally really enjoyed it. And just listening to the directors talk, like, I guess at one point they actually wanted to shut off all the heat to the house so that the actors would actually be freezing. And they wanted Riley to be the one, like there's a point she ends up in ice water and they wanted her to be the one to do it.
To go into the ice water.
They were like, no, we can't make her do that. So he had to
but she's not trembling enough. They're like, dope. That's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. Exactly. We're not killing our lead actress.
Yeah, it's a beautiful looking movie, and just everything that they created for it, from the sets. It's one of the best looking horror movies of the year for sure.
Agreed.
Awesome. So The Lodge, that's Amanda's number 5. My number 5, as I mentioned earlier, was The Invisible Man. So we are back to Art for number 4.
My number 4, I'm not sure what festivals this played at, but it is available on Netflix for everyone to watch. It is called I'm No Longer Here. And pretty much it's this kid who has his own like little gang that hangs out together. You know, they're hustling, they're doing what they want to do back in Mexico. But there's an actual gang who's like looking at them going, yo, you're the kid who takes care of your group. Eventually you should join us. And the movie takes place from his moments back home in Mexico, and then when he's moved over here to the United States, and the juxtaposition of what he's going through. I think it is absolutely fantastic. And there is a moment, because the movie is really about self-identity, and there is a moment that like just got me. So I don't know how else to put it, but I thought this one was fantastic. Like I said, it's available to watch on Netflix. Really quiet performance from the main guy, who's going through, you know, not just his own emotions, but he literally cannot understand any of the language once he's come over here. But I highly recommend this one, I'm No Longer Here.
Nice.
Yeah, this was one of those weird Tribeca selections where it
Tribeca.
got the banner, but
Tribeca.
Dude, Tribeca killed this year. Half of it, Tribeca had a great lineup this year.
Yeah, it would have been nice.
It would have been nice.
Amanda, what's your number 4?
This is an unpopular one because I think it had kind of gotten so many not positive reviews. So I went into it with such low expectations, and I had such a great time watching it. The Gentleman.
Interesting.
Guy Ritchie. Yeah. I don't know what it was, but I was like, I saw that in a theater with like 5 other people, and I was laughing. I had a great time. Like, I get that it's kind of so it's a Guy Ritchie movie that kind of deals with Matthew McConaughey's character is kind of like this weed overlord over in England, and it's just great performances from everybody. So it kind of starts with this journalist weaving a story for Jax from Sons of Anarchy.
Yeah.
Charlie Hunnam.
Charlie Hunnam. And, at the beginning, it's kind of a little bit iffy to follow, but then you realize it's that he's a journalist and he's pretending he's selling a story to him, but he's actually telling him all this stuff he knows about his boss and all the stuff that they've done and why he should be inclined to give him a bunch of money to bury the story. Otherwise, things could get really bad. And it's just this weaving story between you've got like McConaughey kind of wants to sell the business and get out of it. You've got the person who's planning to buy it. You've got guy from Crazy Rich Asians, who's another competing drug family that wants to buy into it too. But I know a lot of people were like, it's like if somebody was trying to make a Guy Ritchie movie and not actually a Guy Ritchie movie. But I don't know. I personally
Doesn't
had a
that
really
suck
great time
when the
with
director
it.
gets to that point?
Yeah, when it gets to the point where it's somebody like, it seems like you're trying to mimic yourself. But
Oh, wow,
no,
Spielberg.
yeah.
Oh, you're just going to make The Post? Wow. Just,
Yeah, well,
just a regular 9 out of 10 movie. We expect an 11 out of 10. Yeah, dude, I feel you.
Good
This
job.
was the Sundance movie
Yeah.
that got away. There's always those movies that come out during Sundance.
Yeah,
but
and I
we're
almost
busy
went to see
watching
it.
the Sundance flicks.
Yeah, I almost went to see
Um,
it the first night. But then we went and got food instead, and it was great.
Right, you know,
But, yeah.
dude, they had a whole like line of whiskey going for this movie. Like it was one of the
Yeah.
Kingsman flicks. They had a strain also in Colorado when we were passing through for the gentleman. So I think I still need to finish this one because I only got like halfway through it.
Okay.
But yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, another one that I missed because,
Okay.
like we said, we were at Sundance. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of the thing that Guy Ritchie got famous for, are these sort of crime movies that have a little bit of like fun charisma and like fast talking characters.
So much charisma.
It's
in
got
this.
a really deep cast. Like I don't think we even mentioned Michelle Dockery or Colin Farrell
No,
or
yeah.
Hugh Grant.
Yeah, Hugh Grant is hilarious. Did I say Hugh Laurie? I meant Hugh Grant when I said Hugh Laurie. Hugh Grant, hilarious in this. He's so good. Like he's flirting with Charlie Hunnam a bunch. It's just like, it's just so, there's just little moments that are just like genuinely hilarious. And like it could have been cleaned up in areas, but I personally really enjoyed it. I watched it again like a couple weeks ago when I was visiting my parents, and it was really good. I liked it.
I'm about to finish it.
And not that IMDb ratings are the be all end all, but it's got a 7.9. It's a lot higher than I expected.
I think I was looking on Letterboxd and just what people were telling me, because I remember, because it released overseas early. It was out in 2019 in like
Really?
Ireland and stuff like that. So I have a friend in Ireland who was like, I was not really a fan of this. So I went into it with lowered expectations, but I had a great time watching it. I loved it.
Dope.
Very cool. All right, so my number 4 is a movie that had a brief stint in theaters, but will be available on VOD again soon. It's A24's First Cow, the latest from Kelly Reichardt. This really interesting movie about some of the first fur trappers in Oregon setting up camps and civilizations there. It's this like story of early Americans that doesn't, I think, get told that much in that it's a little bit of frontiersman stuff, but it's more about establishing a town and starting a business. It's like this buddy story about a Chinese immigrant and a fur trapper, where one of them just becomes very good at making these oily cakes, and then they start to like, try to grow this business in the 1800s, and it's just this unique setting and perspective in a way that I was really enraptured by it. The relationship between these two characters is really good, and both John Magaro and Orion Lee are very, very good in the movie, as is Toby Jones, who kind of plays a little bit of the antagonist. It's just a really neatly observed world in the way that Kelly Reichardt does with her films. It's quiet, but so true and kind of beautiful in the way that it feels like life. I'm excited for more people to catch it, because it's such a unique movie and didn't really get its full run during the first theatrical run that it had.
I'm excited to catch it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet either.
Now that it'll be out.
At home.
At
On
home.
VOD.
On
Soon,
VOD. Maybe we'll even get Saint Maud. I don't know.
I
Yeah,
have
I've
seen
been very
Saint Maud.
You have Saint Maud?
I saw it. No, I don't have it. I saw it.
You
Sorry, I
own it? It
excited
is
to-
in your. You have the 35
Yeah, it's
millimeter.
in my hands right here.
How was that one? How was it? Was it good?
It was pretty good. I feel like they're
Okay.
marketing it as a little bit more exciting than it actually is. So I think it's going to run into the same kind of problem The Lodge did, where people are going to be going into it thinking it's something completely different than it actually
See,
is.
and that's the craziest part of going to festivals, because Saint Maud was one that got away at TIFF. So seeing how it was pitched at TIFF to then how it's pitched publicly is always really interesting.
Yeah.
My number 3, as we get to the top 3, a swallow. I really enjoyed Swallow.
Ooh.
Amanda, you really got to watch this one. I
Okay,
know it is, and it's really hard to pitch because someone who may have like a phobia against people swallowing things, I don't know how else to put it. That's like telling someone who's afraid of the water to go watch like what is it? The one where they get lost in the water, Deep Water,
40
or whatever
Deep
it is.
Water,
Lost.
47 meters,
to go watch
whatever.
All Is Lost or something like that. 47. Yeah, it wouldn't make any sense, but
Yeah.
it is a fantastic performance. Another Tribeca film. Like, what is going on here? It's a very slow moving story that is all like from Haley Bennett's perspective, who one needs to get some respect because this woman comes out in a movie and everyone just goes, oh my gosh, it's Katniss. Oh look, it's Katniss 2.0. Nah, it's Haley Bennett. I think she killed it in this movie. I loved hearing the behind the scenes from the director, who based it off of his grandma and a lot of the stuff that she was going through, and how different it is from her story right now that's told in Swallow to what that was for his grandma in the 50s, where there is no other way to get away and they just throw you in a psychiatric ward. But over here it's like, nah, you are a trophy wife, and a trophy wife gives a trophy kid. Beautifully shot. The score, the sound design, especially, because it's the sound design that makes the swallowing disgusting, because she's probably eating something else and they'll cut to something else, but it's the sounds that you can't escape from. So maybe watch it on mute so you can still get the story, but you won't have to deal with the swallowing aspects of it. But I highly, highly, highly recommend this movie.
Just Amanda seems so
I know,
I'll check
right?
it.
She's so
I'll check it
uncomfortable
out.
because I know she wants to see it, but
I do.
it's too gross
There's
to
just
watch.
there's movies that I do this with. Every once in a while, you just give it a little. In Hereditary with there's a little bit of this in the theater, just a little bit of I'm gonna look at the ground. I'm still getting everything.
It's worth the ending though. It's worth
Okay.
the actual ending, and
I will
I don't want to
check
say
it
more
out.
to it. It's just fantastic.
No.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
All right, Swallow
Cool.
on 2 of our lists.
Nice.
Definitely worth catching up.
Yes, sir.
on. Amanda, how about you? What made it to your top 3?
My top 3 is kind of moving around because we've already mentioned Big Time.
Hey, same for me.
I'm gonna go.
You could
I'm gonna go.
you could just talk about Big Time if you want.
I'm good. I felt like I said everything I needed to about Big Time.
Cool.
But we'll go Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, which I'm
Another
sure
one that's
is
gonna come
higher
up,
up
yes.
on other people's lists.
Yep.
I was kind of going back and
Yep.
forth between this and another one. But we've talked about this on this. We did an entire episode about this for the podcast here. It's a very just real, just incredibly heartbreaking movie about a girl who needs to get an abortion. That's like the basic premise, and just showing how all the different steps that she would have to take to actually safely get one done, and how difficult it would be, and how all the different obstacles that she would come across. So like in her hometown, it's, she goes somewhere where she assumes they can help you, but it's just like one of these fake little anti-abortion clinics that's going to try to encourage you to keep the kid, because she gets there because she wants to get a proper test, and she pulls out like a Walmart pregnancy
Dollar
test.
Tree.
Yeah, basically it's all like, this is how we're going to find out. So it's like, okay, so that actually, and then because she's not a proper doctor, didn't actually know how far along she really was, so that caused more issues when she actually did get to a facility that could have handled it in a quick way. It actually became a much more serious procedure because she was further along than she assumed she was. So they basically have to get from their town. I think it's Philadelphia, right?
Yeah, they're in Philly.
Philadelphia or Pennsylvania? Yeah.
Or no, they're in Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. Okay, so they have to get from Pennsylvania to New York, and then it's just her cousin kind of accompanies on her, and it's just such a beautiful relationship between them, just as cousins, and like so much in that movie is done, not said, which upset some people. Some people were like, I don't know why she didn't say something. It's like, well, she did, but she did it with her hands. She did it with
Why
like
didn't you direct it with a card?
You don't need it. It's just you can have those tender moments where everybody involved knows that that's the moment. You don't need to bring it up again later, even though it's a movie. This honestly does kind of feel like a camera just following somebody around in a real story. It doesn't feel like they're trying to dramatize it in any way or gussy it up in certain ways to just make a bigger point. It's really just supposed to show you the struggle from point A to point B, from the emotional standpoint to the just everything. It was really beautiful movie.
Eliza Hittman uses that like neo-realist perspective where it just feels so much like fly on the wall, so much like you're just you're in the room with them as these things are happening. It doesn't feel like a movie, and that thing you're saying about not necessarily getting the big dramatic payoff is another just element of the movie that feels like life. And it just relatable and real and beautifully captured. For me, Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always is my number one.
I figured it would be
year so far.
Yeah. It was on my number
I mean,
two.
I was blown away, as you mentioned, not just by Eliza Hittman, but the performances from Sidney Flanigan and Talia Ryder. Also, Theodore Pellerin, who plays the boy who they run into on the bus and in New York, is kind of provides this like creepy sort of presence.
That's why he's so great.
I think he does it. He does such I think he's so good at that sort of non-threatening but also like luring kind of presentation that he has. And it's such a well-crafted movie in every respect. It's something that we get a lot into in our Let Us Explain is all the ways in which it touches on bigger societal issues and stuff like you were mentioning, how the doctors she sees in rural Pennsylvania give her a different outlook than the doctors she sees in Manhattan, and how different political ideologies sometimes kind of influence how abortion cases are treated. So I think it's just a stunning film. Blew me away at Sundance and continues to impress me. My number one, Amanda's number three. And maybe on Art's list somewhere as we get to your number two.
What was your number three?
Oh, I skipped my number three.
Yeah.
All right.
You got so
my
excited
number
with your
three,
number one.
Yeah.
I know. My number three is the one that we're going to talk about in more depth in an upcoming Intercut video. It's The Five Bloods, the latest from Spike Lee. Is it a little bit messy? Sure. Is it a little slack? Sure. Does it feel like 4 or 5 movies combined? Yeah. But it's also one of the most interesting movies that I've seen about war in general in quite a long time, specifically because of all the context that Spike Lee, and only a guy like Spike Lee, feels like he could bring to this generational story about Black Vietnam veterans who return to Vietnam, partially to recover the remains of their dead friend, partially to go on a treasure hunt. It's just a film that's loaded with historical relevance and historical knowledge too. The way that Spike Lee always does his films is he imparts so much knowledge, but it's also a very exciting movie, a very charming movie in times, and a gripping war story too. I'm excited to have people listen to our more in-depth chat on it, because I think we got into a lot of interesting stuff, including the elements of the flashbacks that I've seen people deride without necessarily thinking about, like, why it might be that these men who are experiencing post-traumatic stress disorders then also experience the flashbacks to war as their current selves rather than their younger selves. I don't know. Maybe think about it a little bit. The Five Bloods, it's a great movie, though. One of Spike's recent bests, and my number three.
Yeah, I've decided that's my number three, and Never, Rarely is my number two, just because things have moved around. We're good. Yeah. No,
that was one of your top switching up? Yeah. For me, that was one of my honorable mentions, but it has one of the best performances of the year so far in the male category, actor category. I don't know who's going to beat him. Like, well, one, because we don't have any other movies coming out at the moment, but like I think without a doubt, Delroy Lindo.
Delroy.
Yeah, he's
Delroy.
One of the best ones. I do have another one, but he's not qualified, but I'll get there. I'll get there soon. Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always was my number two. So we go, what is it, 3, 2, 1? Or is it 2, 2, 1 for Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always?
It's weird. It's all over the place for me right now.
It's top 5. That's really all that matters. For me, my 3, 2, 1 are always just the top of the top. Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always is fantastic. Everything that these two said. I'm just going to add that I truly believe Eliza Hittman has the best directing of the year. But it's not flashy. So it's not considered best directing of the year. It's so tame.
It's so appropriate and matches the material, you know?
I could never.
Because it lingers where it needs to.
I do not have the patience to do that.
Yeah, it lingers where it needs to. It closes in where it needs to. It lets things breathe when it needs to. It gets uncomfortably close when it needs to. Yeah, it's so good. So good. Yeah.
Yeah, and the never rarely, sometimes always scene. Like that's all of it is in there.
Oh my god.
That's all I'll say.
Absolutely one of the
two.
standouts of the year.
Between Swallow, never rarely, my number one. All of them could have been number one, really.
Fair.
Right.
What's your guys' number two? Or who?
Yeah,
who
Amanda,
hasn't?
so you said Never Rarely is your number two, but do you want to talk a little more about The Five Bloods?
I pretty much all the same things that you really had to say. I think it was really, it's juggling a lot of really heavy subject matter, especially from a standpoint where like, it's like they are both the victims and the perpetrators of something, but they're the perpetrators of something because they were kind of forced into it. Like Vietnam, everybody knows. Like America never should have been in Vietnam. Like that's like the known thing. But then they're also, frontline sacrifices essentially. They've been put into the harshest conditions and then had to go back to a country where they're also in the harshest conditions and they're still not getting treated equally in either of those places. But then obviously they were in a place where they probably shouldn't have been, committing acts that they shouldn't have been for people that knew they probably shouldn't have been there. So there's so much going on there. And I think almost how it's handled lets you know that it's like, obviously you're not trying to pick a side because there isn't necessarily a side to pick in a lot of these situations. But yeah, no, it's very...
Yeah, no, it's a movie that really reckons with the damage caused both in Vietnam and at home for these people. Yeah, and I think so much of the movie is about the legacy of that kind of impact that war has on people.
Yeah.
So, all right,
another one thing. It's almost he's got this very good way of kind of like pulp serialization where he takes real footage, and he did the same thing with Black Klansman where you take real scenes, real shots, and throw it in. And to some people that actually bothered them. It's like, I don't want to watch an actual scene from a movie and then cut to somebody's brains blown out on the ground. But it's like, it's just supposed to show you how like horrifying and real these situations were.
That's a lie. Totally. Because you can pick another movie and they'd been completely okay with it in other movies. They just didn't like it happening.
That's a piece of criticism that I really reject.
I agree.
Because while I understand that, it's a different thing to see real violence and fake violence, I think part of the thing about fake violence is we become so desensitized to it that you have to be reminded in situations like this film that when they're showing you violence, they're showing you something that's serious. They're showing you something that is very damaging to people and to generations. So
Agreed.
I think Lee does a great job in incorporating that real world footage into The Five Bloods. So Amanda and I both have The Five Bloods at number 3. Amanda had Never Rarely, Sometimes Always, and Art also had Never Rarely, Sometimes Always at number 2. I have Bad Education at number 2. I talked about that before.
Okay.
So Art, I think we're going to your number 1.
It is not for the deja vu here, but Bad Education, I personally believe, is one of the best movies of this year. Like Zach said, the more you rewatch it, I've seen it a total of 3 times, you just go, fantastic. I think it's one of the best performances of the year. I would put him still second to Linda, only because he didn't have the accent down. I think that's probably the biggest criticism I've heard from the people who like actually went to the school and who know it a bit more. It's probably just the accents. I think Allison had it better. But performance-wise, he's not eligible because it's still an HBO thing, even though the rules were changed. He's not eligible, but whatever. It is available for everybody to watch. HBO is actually putting out a physical edition that you could buy that comes with the special features like we wanted.
Ooh.
Yeah, but like
That's
Zach
awesome.
was talking about, it's Parasite. It's all of these other movies from last year that we talked about. Because again, it came from the TIFF that was all about eating the rich. But even more than that, it puts you in a real life scenario that shows you that the people who are doing bad things, it's only the lower end ones that get caught.
Yeah.
Because everyone does bad things in the system. It's just you weren't doing the bad things to benefit everybody else. Which I would say really connects to the college scandal that we had. What was it, a year or 2 ago?
Oh my God. Yeah, that's still going on.
Yeah, with
Full
what's
House.
Felicity Huffman.
Thank you.
Full House lady, Rebecca whatever.
What they did was
Yeah.
wrong, but they got caught because they didn't do it the legal wrong way.
Yeah.
You know? It was how they
Yeah.
gave. It was how they gave that got them caught. It was how he took that got them caught.
Yeah.
I don't know. I find that so fascinating. And along with the interview that we did with the director, and just a line that he said where you know that it's flawed when you can't pinpoint the person to blame it on. At that point, you know it's the system. One of my favorites of the year. The three that I mentioned for sure are going to last up until the end of the year. Where they end up, I don't know. I still have to see the other two more times. But Bad Education, a fantastic movie that proves to you that HBO isn't movie theaters. It's HBO, baby. Giving you the best of the best. And now that everyone has HBO Max, I think people will realize that, hey, you can watch the other things that are not Game of Thrones, because there is a lot on there to watch.
There is.
For you guys, you're number one. I know I got Zach's.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say I messed up my list at this point, and I'm just very confused. So I'll hit
Artemis
you up
Fowl.
after Zach. I'm just going to hit you up after Zach. We're going to bounce King of Staten Island, and we're going to move things around. I realize that there's actually 11 things here. My bad.
All right, no worries.
So my number one was Big Time Adolescence, just because I love those coming of age stories and really hit me. But To the Stars was another one that I loved. That was from last year.
Still haven't talked about it.
Yeah, that was from last year's Sundance. I loved it. I wrongly left the first time I watched it with like 15 minutes to spare because I was trying to make it to another showing that had a lot of hype around it, and I regretted it. So I actually made time a different day to go watch it again. I got a picture with the director. I think it's just very beautiful movie. So the whole thing's happening in like rural Oklahoma. And you've got this girl who's an outcast. And in so many of these movies, the outcast girl is just kind of like, oh, she reads and has glasses. She's an outcast. But in this, she actually has something that kind of makes her wet the bed, even though she's a teenager. And you kind of learn that a lot of it is because her mom has not even wet the bed, just wets herself regularly kind of thing. But you kind of learn that so much of it is anxiety. She does it because of anxiety, and her mom makes it so much worse for her because her mom's constantly being like, oh, you can't go there because you know what's going to happen. You're going to have an accident or something. So it's like that increased anxiety is actually almost destroying her, or essentially destroying her life. So this new girl ends up moving to town, who has all of these crazy big stories about, you know, things that her dad does. And she's just very different, very reckless. She's from a bigger city. And then kind of as the story keeps going, a lot of these different things start to unravel. So this new girl is played, her name is Maggie. And I think Art has her name.
Liana Liberato.
Yeah, Liana Liberato. And so she comes in and really helps Iris open up. She really helps Iris come into herself, is her first actual supportive friend, gives her confidence. But then stuff with Maggie's life starts to unravel too, and you realize that the reason that they moved wasn't because the dad got a new job opportunity. Is this a spoiler if I say what the reason is? Because I feel like it's a selling point.
Probably.
I mean,
I'd say keep it there so people have to go watch the movie to know.
True. Okay. There's a thing there's a reason why they moved, and it has to do with something that Maggie did that really is not a problem, but it was a problem in 1960s Oklahoma.
Right.
And it just becomes this heartbreaking tale. It does fall into some tropes in that area that we've commented on before, but overall it's a very, very beautiful movie of kind of like self-discovery, but the ending is so brutal and painful, and I think it made like a couple of the guys that we were at Sundance with last year cry, actually.
They were
they were
drowning
really
in their tears.
Yeah, like, you know, I expect that of myself, but it just hit so hard. Originally, it was black and white. It's supposed to be black and white, but we knew this was going to happen. Once it got to distribution, they were like, gotta recolor it. So I haven't watched the color version yet, but I'm sure it kind of loses a lot of the nuance because it wasn't shot to be in color, it was shot to be in black and white. And that does actually make a difference. It's still definitely worth the watch, I would say. Just kind of a personal nitpick that it was kind of annoying that they did that. But I think it's definitely worth the watch, and I'm very excited to revisit it.
I had no idea that Iris, this took me to like afterwards, she's the main girl from Moonrise Kingdom.
Yep, she is. She's the little girl. Yeah.
I had no idea.
All grown up.
Yeah, all grown up now. And she's in Manchester by the Sea, too, actually.
Yeah, I recognize her in Manchester. Maybe it was the black and white into the stars.
Yeah,
maybe in color
fair.
I'll recognize her a little bit more.
Maybe a little more. But yeah, I thought it was really good, and a lot of really good performances in this, especially the dynamic between Iris and her mom, and just kind of like the tension there, and just kind of how that explores through the movie as well. And then obviously Maggie's home problems and stuff. It's really good.
Yeah, you mentioned the stuff with anxiety as well. I think also it comes into play with that 1960s Oklahoma setting, and that people don't know how to address these problems
Yes.
or how to deal with these problems, and you see the repressed attitudes kind of taking a toll on these young women in the movie. It's a beautifully told story, and hopefully more people get a chance to catch up with it. Hopefully there's like a black and white version
It's
out there
out
somewhere.
there.
I know it was
It's gotta be out
supposedly
there.
it was playing like one virtual cinema.
This is
but-
going to sound horrible, but I'm going to DM the director on Instagram. We're not friends, but she followed me back. So
You're gonna
maybe she'll
download
answer
the
me.
movie. You're gonna
Maybe
put the
she'll
black and white
answer
contrast
me.
on it and return it to her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was really good.
All right, so Amanda, you are coming in with To the Stars at the number 1 spot. So yeah, that's all of our number ones. As I mentioned, mine was Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. Arts is Bad Education. A few movies showing up a couple times on our list. Definitely make sure you check them out. Let us know what your top 10s for the year are in the comments below, or by shooting us an email, intercutpod@gmail.com, or reaching out on social media @intercutpod. But that's about all for this edition of the Best of 2020 so far. Make sure you watch our Best TV so far episode as well, and you can catch more from me, Zach Shevich, by following me on Twitter, Instagram, or Letterboxd @ZShevich. That's ZSHEV, as in Veronica Franz, the co-director of The Lodge, ICH. And check out my YouTube at youtube.com/multiplex show. Amanda, where can people catch more from you?
You can find me on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, all of the above, and some more. Letterboxd @Amandathejedi.
Sick.
Awesome.
You can find me on Let Me Explain, The A to Z Show, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, in black and white over on Twitch, or every week here on the Intercut Podcast.
Yeah, you can listen to every episode of the Intercut Podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, or your favorite podcatcher. I like Overcast. And then make sure you're subscribed not just to the audio podcast, but to the video feed as well on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/intercutpod, where you can catch our bright, smiling faces as we break down the latest in entertainment. Please leave a comment, like the videos, consider heading over to iTunes to leave us a 5-star review, like our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages. All of them are @intercutpod to get updates throughout the week from Art, from me, from Amanda, from all the guests that we feature here on Intercut. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, are you lost, baby girl?